Hello, and welcome to the Project Elected podcast. Project Elect is a nonpartisan nonprofit whose goal is pretty simple. We want to get more Latter-day Saint women involved in public service. On this podcast, we interview amazing Latter-day Saint women who are involved in public service. Hi, my name is Audrey Perry-Martin. I'm the founder of Project Elect and the host of this podcast.
I am so excited today. We get to have Brooke Scheffler, who is the Director of Boards and Commissions in the Utah Office of the Governor. So she works in the Utah Governor's office. She is running all these boards and commissions, and there's a ton of them, and I'll have her tell you all about them. But this is going to be very interesting, and we get to talk about this very unknown topic and learn more about it. So thank you so much, Brooke, for being with us today.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be able to participate. I think this is such an amazing thing that you're doing. So I'm excited to share about some of the important work that people can get involved in.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Okay. So Brooke, let's just start. Will you just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what your job is, what you do in the governor's office and what that entails?
I am Director of Boards and Commissions. I've been working in the governor's office for about 7 years now. I started just at the front desk as the receptionist, kind of the voice of the office, and received all of those wonderful phone calls and then kind of worked my way up. That was during the Herbert administration, and then was on the communications team, and then worked for our amazing Lieutenant Governor, Henderson, for a year, and then transferred over to boards and commissions. I have 2 kids now, so I need a little bit more of a flexibility to be able to do both. I'm so grateful because it's so important to me to be able to raise my kids, but also have a fulfilling and meaningful job. And that is what I do in boards and commissions. I help people throughout our state look for opportunities to be able to serve in their community. And that is through our board or commission. So we have over 380 boards or commissions for our state. And some of them are independent, but most of them fall under our state agencies. So that's Department of Workforce Services, Department of Commerce, and there's quite a bit of range in our boards and commissions. We have our wildlife board. We have our Utah Beef Council. We have our licensing boards. You can sit on the cosmetology board. So there's quite a bit of range of boards and commissions. And so I work with all of our agencies for the state in helping find those qualified candidates and then moving them through the process, getting them confirmed by the agency and then moved forward to be confirmed by the governor. And then a third of those boards actually do require the Senate to confirm and appoint as well. So it can be a bit of a process sometimes, and I am the point of contact through the whole thing.
That's a lot of people I'm forced to manage. How do you help people apply to boards and commissions? Like, how do you find these people? And if someone's interested, how would they apply? Or even find out, I guess maybe start at how would they even find out what boards and commissions there are to apply to and if they would be qualified?
Absolutely. That is a big step. A lot of the times people aren't necessarily sure what a board or commission even is. I'll tell a lot of my friends my job. They're like, oh, what's a Director of Boards and Commissions? What does that even mean? So it's getting through that process and getting through that, over that hurdle of making sure, okay, this is what this is. Let's go forward. So we have a website that we redesigned last year to make it more user-friendly so that people can know what's open, what the boards are, what some of the qualifications may be, which can be tricky sometimes. A lot for our licensing boards, there are certain qualifications. You have to be the licensed plumber to sit on the plumbers board. And we're working with the legislature. That's one of our big priorities, to make sure that we kind of remove some of those barriers so that there's more public member seats and that there's different qualifications so that we have more of a variety of people sitting on our boards and commissions. So the best way to go and apply is going to our boards and commissions website. It's boards.utah.gov, and you can sift through and see interest areas. First off, you can see, okay, I'm interested in serving on something education or business or agriculture. And you can sift through and click your interest area and then see, okay, here's a couple of openings. And then it will show the qualification and then the term date when the seat is opened, how long you'll serve for. And then it will also show a quick summary of what the board is, how many meetings you'll have to attend. Usually it's 4 a year if you receive per diem. A lot of the times it is just volunteer. But it will give you kind of an overview of what that board or commission is. And then you'll apply and start the process and go from there.
So you talked about like the plumber's board and qualifications. What are some other qualifications you might need? I'm assuming there's not like geographical because these are state boards, or do you have boards where you have to live in a certain area of the state or things like that? Like what are some other qualifications that people might need to be on?
Not necessarily. I think the biggest ones is just for the specific board, you have to have that certain qualifications, a background in business, background in finance. But most of the times there are a lot of public member spots on those boards. And I think that's where we're trying to go with this so that we can get those individuals, those women. That's our big push, obviously, right? So that we can get these women appointed to these boards and commissions so that they have the chance to be able to share their opinions. We obviously know that organizations, boards and commissions thrive when both are sitting around that table, men and women. So if you feel like you're not qualified, don't. Like I said, there could be certain qualifications where you have to have a certificate or background in this, but most of the times, not all the time, there are public member openings and you can apply for that seat. And if you're passionate about it, apply.
What do these boards and commissions do? Like, is it just sitting on a meeting and chatting, or do they actually have some control of what's happening in these different areas? What's the impact you could have on a board or commission?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 3 different types of boards and commissions. We have our policy boards, advisory boards, and then our nominating commissions. So the policy, yes, that's where you're taking care of big policy issues, having a big part in what happens. The advisory, it's more of an advisory board. And then the nominating committees those are big for getting the members onto the commission. So our biggest ones are our judicial nominating commissions and help a lot in our judicial appointments. So it really just depends on what interests you have and how much experience you want to be able to put forward and how much time, again, that you want to put forward towards a board or commission.
So some of them, it sounds like, can have a pretty big impact on different areas in the state.
Absolutely.
That's incredible. Let's go down to the nuts and bolts of how you apply and what the process is like. You were telling me before, it's not a quick process. So what can you expect if you go to this website, you see a board you want to apply to? How's the best way to approach it?
So our system opens up the application 120 days in advance of the term ending. So if you go to the website and you see that a board is open, you'll have to see, okay, this term actually starts in January of 2025. And so you'll have to just make sure that you see the timing wise, because that, like you said, and like we talked about, it can take a little bit of time before you won't be appointed next month, but you'll start the process there and see, okay, this is the start of the term. You'll put your application in, and quite a few eyes will see that application. It will first go through the agency, whether that board falls under, like I said, Department of Workforce Services, Department of Commerce, Department of Natural Resources. They have a team there that sifts through all of those applications. And then once they've taken a look at the application, then they'll send it forward to me and to the governor's office to then have the governor approve and appoint that nomination. And then, like I said, a third of those boards also have to go to the Senate for their confirmation. And that's when the process can get a bit lengthy. It's required in state statute that there's a 30-day public comment period for those nominees. So if anyone wants to go and comment on this nominee that the governor has appointed to this board, they can go in and apply for that. And then the Senate comes together during their floor time for interim and confirms those nominees. It can be quite a bit of time, but I would hope that it wouldn't stray anyone from going and applying, because there's advocates for you within the agency. Myself, if you reach out to me, we can make sure that maybe it's not this time that you get appointed. I was just telling you a story. We did a presentation for Bold the Way Forward, which helps women get appointed. We're in a spoke called Political and Civic Engagement so that we can help women get, whether it's appointed to office or to boards and commissions. And so she attended one of the presentations and she applied for the board, and we were in contact, communication. The term opened up in August and she was the second runner-up, and the governor went with the first one. And so I reached out to her. I said, please, if you're still willing, the agency loved you, the governor loved you. We want you to serve. We know that you're willing and able. Can you serve when this next seat becomes available in January? Absolutely. I'd love to. So we went through the application process again and had her apply for another seat on that same board. It was another public member spot, but we didn't want her to stray away that she didn't get it this time, but the next time she would.
And it seems like that might be pretty likely to happen, right? Because the agency would know your name. If you were a runner-up, they would already know. The process might be a little smoother than if they had never heard of you before. So that's good to know. So don't get discouraged if the first time you don't get a seat. You are more likely to get it if you keep applying.
And like I mentioned, I mean, the process can be very overwhelming. It's putting yourself out there. It's getting involved in something you may not know too much about. And so getting discouraged, I feel like, can be very easy, especially, yes, if that first time around you're not appointed. So please don't. We need you. We need you on those boards. And if it's not this board and maybe it's a different board, let's go for it. I had another individual reach out and say, okay, I'm interested in these 10 boards. What's the next opening? And so we went through and we looked at all of the term dates and when the next seat would be available. And it was March of next year. It's like, okay, this is the one I want to go for. Let's try it. But here's all these others that if this one doesn't work out, this is what I want to do. And so I think the biggest thing is just having that passion and willingness to be able to serve. And I think it opens up so many doors. I think that's overlooked. Boards and commissions is really overlooked, but it's that opening that door of those connections and those opportunities and learning how state government works, how the ins and outs of everything. And so I think boards and commissions can be huge in progressing whatever it is that you want down the road. It's that first big step.
So walk me through the process of the application. Is it a written application? Are there interviews involved? How does that work? Or is it different for every board?
It's different for every board, different for every agency. Some have a different internal process. Some, they do sit down. I know a couple that fall over in the Department of Public Safety. You would sit down with the commissioner and kind of go have a quick interview. But most of them are just online and you just input your information, upload a resume. We have a section there that can your statement of interest. So why you want to serve, your background, why are you qualified? And then, like I said, that application is sent forth to the agency. And then they may decide if you sit down and have an interview. I think for our bigger ones, our Multicultural Commission, Martin Luther King Commission, they'll sit down and they'll interview for those commissioners before being sent to the governor. We do rely on our agencies to do some of that vetting. But again, once it comes to the governor's office, we go through the process again.
So when it's in the governor's office, is there another application to fill out or is there another interview?
No. Once that application is sent forward, that's really all the nominee needs to do. It's just kind of that waiting game of going through the agency and then the governor. And then if the Senate needs to confirm you. So that application.
So when you're talking about the process, it's not like you are involved in every step of the process. You just basically do the application, maybe an interview with the agency, and then you just have to wait and see where it goes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the agency will be in communication with you and I'll be in communication with you once it hits the governor's desk. Because that's really kind of where I step in is once everything's been sent forward to me. And sometimes, if we take nominees to the agency, hey, we've got this really stellar candidate. We see that you have an opening. Can we, take a look? And so we're really just a big team in making sure that we get those who are willing. And because sometimes we'll appoint someone and it'll be a couple of years and then they just won't show up. And so obviously we don't want that happening. We want to make sure that our candidates are willing to serve the 4 years. And of course, if something happens, okay, that's fine. You can resign and we can get you replaced. So we really strive to make sure that we have a good relationship with our agencies so that we make sure that we're getting those good candidates in those spots.
Right. So if a woman is going to apply and she decides to apply after listening to this podcast, should she fill out the application and then contact you? Is that the best thing to do? Okay.
Yes, because then I have eyes on this individual who has just applied. So I would love that. I would love to have you reach out to me because then I can say, okay, great. You're willing, you're able, we get you involved. It's such a big push for us, especially in this administration, the Cox and Henderson administration. We're really wanting to make sure and prioritize that we diversify our boards and commissions and that we aren't just appointing the same old third term, I want to keep going, but that we give the opportunities to those who want to have a place in their community, who want to do something. It's so rewarding to feel a part of something bigger. And so, yes, please reach out to me. We'll do what we can to make sure that we get you appointed to something.
That's fantastic. I serve on a little local board, and it is really rewarding. And it's nice to just be part of the conversation, feel like you're having an input in your community, and that, a cause or an issue that you're passionate about and know some stuff about and have some experience in is you can contribute. And it's not a huge time commitment, and you can do it almost any season of your life. It's not like running for office, which is often pretty intense.
Big time commitment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you just deal like these 300 odd boards are just the state level boards in Utah, correct? So there's also probably thousands of local boards and commissions as well. But it's just the state level boards that we're talking about that you're in charge of, that people should contact you for. You've talked about wanting more women to apply, but what do you do specifically to encourage women to apply?
Absolutely. So like I just mentioned, this is a big priority for the Cox and Henderson administration to make sure that, yes, we're diversifying all of our boards and commissions. And so I've partnered with the governor's office, and then my position, we've partnered with many different organizations, Boulder Way Forward, which really strives to make sure that we get women appointed or elected, whatever it may be. And then just making sure that we're going to those presentations, we're going to those conferences, we're getting the word out that we need our women. We need more women on boards and commissions. I just did a study with Dr. Susan Madsen, and I'm sure everyone's heard of her as well. And we did the status of boards and commissions in the state of Utah. And we took all the data, all the information, and we saw that from 2016, there was a 6% increase in women appointed to boards and commissions. And so it's not a ton, but we are moving the needle, and we are getting those women appointed to our boards and commissions. So like I said, it can be overwhelming, but the reward is so great. And just feeling that impact that you have and can have. And then the connections that come with it. I think, like you just said, being on that board or commission, you have another community, you have a rally of people around you. And yeah, maybe you don't need to know everything to begin with, but it's something that you're interested in and you want to run with it. The individual that reached out to me was the state library board, and she worked for the PTA for school. And she's like, I think I've got some experience. I'm not necessarily sure what they do, but this is what I want to go for. And that's great. You'll learn, and you'll go to those monthly meetings. And then hopefully by the end of 4 years, the doors are open, connections are made.
Yeah. You know a lot more than you did when you started, I'm sure. What roadblocks do you feel like women face when they're trying to get on boards and commissions? And I think that study where 6% increase, that is actually, pretty good for that period to have increased it. It means it's moving in the right direction. And I think we all know this doesn't happen overnight. It's the long game. But what roadblocks do women face in general and that you've seen when they're doing this application?
I think the biggest one I feel that we run into is that qualification piece, that they have to have a certain qualification to be able to serve on this board and not just the public member seat. And so that is something that we're working with alongside our legislature to kind of remove some of those qualifications. And maybe it's the plumber's wife instead of because she would, add just as much value as the plumber would. And so, yeah, we're really striving to make sure that we can remove some of those barriers and those qualifications so that we can just have more of those public member seats or change the qualification like I just mentioned. So, and then I think just getting past that uneasiness of, should I do it? I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not qualified. I think the process can look a bit overwhelming, as I mentioned. Some of them do require the Senate to confirm. But like I've said, once you do it, the reward is so much greater. And I can be your advocate every step of the way, and I can be your contact, and we can be in communication, and we can make sure that we get you appointed to one of those boards.
Mm-hmm. Have you noticed in your position an increase in the number of women applying, or is it still often just the same people?
No, absolutely. We are definitely doing the work, and our agency heads, all of our cabinet members who oversee each of their agencies, they're also doing a big push in this as well. Our Department of Commerce, Margaret Bussey, who's an amazing leader, her internal process for finding some of those members and candidates within all of the licensing boards. She sent out a letter to all of those entities that she recruits some of those board members and say, look, this is what we're doing. This is a priority for our administration, the Cox and Henderson administration. We want to see more women, and we want to see their applications come through. And we've seen it. And we've seen after we go and we have these presentations and we have these conferences, we see those applications come through. We just appointed one to our multicultural commission. They came to one of the activities and they applied and the governor just appointed. So we're seeing it work.
Do you have any advice for a woman who does get appointed to a board and she finds herself as maybe the only woman on the board? How should she approach that? And a lot of these I know have been traditionally mostly or all male boards. So what do you do when you're the first woman and you walk in the room?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the case more often than not. And we're working to change that. But I think our biggest leader and example of this is our lieutenant governor. She is so amazing and her story is so inspiring. When she was a state senator, she said she sat on the tax committee and she was one of 5 men, right? She always just mentioned like, okay, I felt like I had to do all this extra work. I had to do all this extra studying. I had to make sure that I knew exactly what I was talking about. But at the end of the day, when she would go into those committees, she's like, okay, I do know what I'm talking about and I do add value. And so I think it's having that confidence in yourself that I'm here. I've been appointed. They had confidence in me to get me to this spot and to this position and to go forward with it. It's so overwhelming to be around that table and be the only woman, but know that you're there for a reason and that you are now sitting there because of the confidence that people had in you and to speak up and to do your part. So it's hard and so scary.
Yeah.
It's so worth it.
Yeah. You're there because people thought your voice was needed on that
Absolutely.
board. So make sure you use it.
Yes.
Fantastic. Are there any traits or personality traits that you think make a good board member?
I think sometimes, and that's why it's been very difficult to find those women, is because they're moms. They have a full-time job. Sometimes it may not be one more thing we need to add to their plate to sit on a board or commission. I think just the dedication and the passion behind whatever it is that you want to do or serve. I think if you have that, then really showing up to those board meetings and being effective, it just comes when you have that passion and dedication to show up, to be there, and to make sure that you're speaking and you're voicing your opinion and whatever it may be for that board or commission. So, but I think that's the hardest thing sometimes is just that time. But a lot of our boards and commissions, there is a virtual option because that's what we do nowadays. And like I said, there's some compensation for some of the boards. So it's not entirely volunteer work most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not doing it to make a lot of money, but it is, I feel like it's such a good way to get involved in service outside of your, a lot of women we talk to are very involved in service, like at their kids' school or in the church, but not really outside of that sphere. And this is such a good way to have influence and serve others and, bring the concerns of those in your community that you've heard talking to everybody and know from experience and actually make a positive difference for those people by what you're doing on a board or commission. So it's such a great way to serve. And I hope more women will recognize that and be willing to step up. Last question. Is there a difference between boards and commissions? Like we always say boards and commissions, but what does that really mean?
Right. I think it's just a catch-all title for everything. So it could be a committee, it could be a task force, it could be a board or a commission. But no, there's not necessarily a difference between the board or commission. Like I said, there's 3 different types of boards and commissions, the policy advisory and nominating, but it's kind of just a catch-all title for those committees or task force or boards or commissions.
Gotcha. Good to know. Okay. So we're running out of time, but I always want to ask at the end of these episodes if you have an invitation for our listeners, something they can do in the near future to get involved and take a step forward in public service.
Absolutely. We always say after we have these presentations and these conferences is make the change and go and apply. That is simply how that process begins, is just taking that first step, going to the website, reaching out to the agency, reaching out to me and saying, hey, I'm interested. What can I do? How can I get the process going? And that, like I said, the application is the biggest thing because then we've got all your information, we've got your resume, we can look up different boards or commissions that you'd be qualified for, that you'd be a good fit for, then we can go from there. But like I said, the reward is so great. I think sometimes as women, we want to do it all. As being a full-time job, a full-time mom, I have 2 little kids. And so this season of life is very fun. I have a 3-year-old and then he's going to turn 1. and he does not sit still. He's learning to do the stairs. He's just all over the place. And so sometimes I feel like I fall short in the things that I need to do, right? But I think having that sense of community within the boards and commissions is that fulfillment and that reward that, okay, I am doing so much more. I am adding to the greater purpose. And so I think that's so big. And I think that's something to remember, is that we can do it and that it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was very well said. Well, Brooke, this was delightful talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to give us all this wonderful information. And we will put the website address on the notes in our podcast episode. And also, if you want to contact Brooke, send an email to Project Elect and we will send you onto her. info@projectelectwomen.org is our email address. So we can put you in touch with Brooke if you want to chat with her about applying to a board or commission. And thank you so much, Brooke.
Thank you all for listening to the Project Elected podcast. For free resources and materials, head over to projectelectwomen.org. We're also on Instagram and Facebook as Project Elect Women. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate us, or give us a review on iTunes. So until next time, thank you.